I'd like to welcome what is acknowledged as the beginning of a season of giving. We are pleased to offer a special panel discussion on the state of philanthropy in Orange County. To help us do that, we are very pleased to welcome back to our Orange County for us Ambassador Gaddi Vasquez as today's moderator. So Gaddi is Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for Southern California Edison, one of the nation's largest electric utilities, and its parent company, Edison International. He is responsible for government relations activities at the federal and state level, as well as local public affairs. Prior to his current position, he served as U.S. Ambassador and Permanent Representative to the UN agencies based in Rome, and served as Director of U.S. Peace Corps, where he led the International Volunteer Service Organization with volunteers and staff serving in 78 countries. He currently serves on the boards of directors of the Public Policy Institute of California, Board of Directors of the International Republican Institute, Segerstrom Center for the Performing Arts, and National Advisory Board for the Salvation Army. And most recently, he was just named, he and I were talking about this, as a Board of Trustees for Chapman University. The ambassador has been named as one of 100 most influential Hispanics in the United States by Hispanic Business Magazine. In 2014, he was awarded the Ellis Island Medal of Honor, and in 2016, he received the Bill of Rights Award by the Constitutional Rights Foundation, as well as with William Bluth Award from Salvation Army. So please help me welcome Ambassador Gaddi Vasquez.
Thank you very much. It's, first of all, great to be back at the Orange County Forum. It's been a number of years since I had the opportunity to address this audience, and it's great to be here in this beautiful location and facility of the Salvation Army here in Orange County. I am going to just give a few remarks to set this up and then invite our panel to join us. I must say, though, I suffer from fear of high altitude, so we're going to try to manage through the high chairs. Just kidding, just kidding. So philanthropy. I know that some of you, at least I heard that some of you might have been interested in having a panel on the aftermath of November 6th and the politics of what happened here a few hours ago and is still in place. So I would submit to you who were hoping for something like that, that there's still a lot of races that haven't been decided. So maybe something you do in December or down the road when some of the candidates who are still sitting on pins and needles today, right now as we speak, will finally discover whether they are heading to Washington, heading to Sacramento, or continuing to reside in Orange County on a permanent basis. I have been privileged and honored to serve on a number of boards of organizations in philanthropy. When I think about Orange County and all the affluence that we have, it takes me back to an occasion when I was serving as ambassador and I went to speak at one of the most preeminent schools in Italy, in northern Italy. And you know, when you've accomplished a few things in your life, you sort of celebrate it. When you get introduced, they read the bio. The room was packed, standing room only, with some of the brightest Italian students in the country. And so the leader, the principal, the director of the school was reading my biography, and the kids were just like, oh, whatever, you know, award this, award that, whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he finally, near the close of the introduction, and he said, and the ambassador is from Orange County, California. And at that point, things started to happen on a seismic proportion. They started to move around in their chairs. They're speaking in Italian. They're, you know, just, and I'm looking at the director like, what happened? And then I finally was able to lip read one of the students who said, he's from the OC, which at that time was a TV show, and in Italy, it was the most popular teen show in all of Italy amongst the younger audiences. I became an instant celebrity. I was just so popular after that. Anything else I said was just brilliant because I was, after all, from the OC. What I'd like to do for just a moment, just to set up a little bit of the discussion and relate it to the story I've just told you, is that I hope that most of you, and hopefully all of you in this room, recognize that notwithstanding the beauty, the attraction, the beaches, the weather, the economic catalyst that Orange County is, the reality is that there are still many amongst us who are suffering and enduring poverty on a daily basis. And I just want to read to you just very, very briefly, and then we'll go right to the panel. But I want to tell you that the Public Policy Institute of California, whose board I serve on, in July issued a report on poverty in California. And I'm not going to read statistics, but I do want to just plant a couple of seeds in your mind. The California Poverty Measure, a joint research effort by PPIC and the Stanford Center on Poverty and Inequality, is a comprehensive approach to gauging poverty in California. And they found that 21.3% of children, about 1.9 million, were living in poverty in 2016. Without the safety net services that are offered by the government, 35% of those children would live in poverty. And in Orange County, interestingly, the poverty rate amongst children is 24.3%. And so there are children who are enduring very difficult times and very difficult days. And in California, 24.4% of children lived above but fairly close to poverty. And all told, 45% of the children in California are living at the poverty level or near poverty level. And I won't go into more statistics, but if you go to their website, you'll see that the level of poverty in Orange County is rather pronounced. And therein lies, I believe, what is important to the discussion today about philanthropy and where are we going with philanthropy. Because in Orange County alone, there are hundreds, as I discovered, of foundations that operate right here in Orange County and literally allocate hundreds of millions of dollars every year to different causes and to different purposes. So our stated purpose today is to have a discussion amongst the panelists, talk a little bit about philanthropy, but I hope that as we discuss these topics that you will begin to think about what you want to ask the panel, because there's nothing worse for a moderator than to open it up to public participation and hear nothing but crickets. And so I don't want to hear crickets today, I want to hear some great questions. So my first panelist that I'd like to introduce is Doug Freeman. And Doug is Executive Chair and CEO. Doug, where are you? Come on up here, Doug. You can take your, it might take a little bit to get up there, Doug, so you know. And he's very athletic, I might point out. Executive Chair and CEO of Orange County Music and Dance, a nonprofit community music school in Irvine, California. He comes to this role after a long career as a lawyer, businessman, civic leader, and philanthropist. He served in a variety of capacities within the nonprofit field and has served, including the board chair of the Pacific Symphony, where he is now a lifetime trustee and board member, now trustee emeritus at the California Institute of the Arts, a point of personal privilege. Our son is a CalArts Fellow, so we're proud of that. He was also board chair of the UCI Foundation and founding board chair of the Literacy Project, and he is currently chair and president of the Hoag Foundation and of the Ernest and Irma Rose Foundation. Our second panelist is Taryn Palumbo. Taryn? Taryn Palumbo serves as the Executive Director of Orange County Grantmakers, a regional association of philanthropic funders in Orange County. As Executive Director and sole staff, Taryn provides strategic leadership, oversees and executes programming, communication, member services, and community engagement. I think we should get a different kind of chair for Taryn because I don't want to be liable for anything happening here.
Give that to Gaddi.
Thank you very much, sir. As I was saying, Taryn provides strategic leadership, oversees and executes programming, communication, member services, and community engagement, and supports the operations of the organization. Taryn joined OCG as a part-time executive administrator in January 2017 and was promoted to executive director in February of 2018. Prior to joining OCG, Taryn held roles in public policy, government affairs, education, small business engagement, and community relations. She also served as a consultant with the United Way of Orange County, helping to launch Upskill OC, a middle school's job initiative, and with the Olin Group, supporting a variety of nonprofit clients. I think that in light of what we've just transitioned, Taryn deserves a second round of applause. because clearly she is an influential. She has modified the program entirely now. Thank you. Captain Nesan Kistan, who is the Salvation Officer here at this facility. Captain, would you join us up here? Captain Nesan Kistan. The captain has been a Salvation Army officer for more than 10 years, serving most of the time as a church leader in Australia's most multicultural suburb, Auburn, in Western Sydney. During that time, he was the Auburn Police Chaplain, a member of the Community Pride Task Force, sat on several boards with Auburn City Council, and worked with community leaders and those from various ethnic groups. In 2014, he was awarded Auburn City Council's Citizen of the Year Award, and in 2015, Club's NSW Community Pride Award. He is now serving as the Salvation Army's Territorial Multicultural Ministries Coordinator. He sits on the NSW government's task force looking at the settlement of Syrian refugees and the NSW Justice Department Advisory Council. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in politics with honors and majors in psychology and politics. Do those go together, psychology and politics? Okay. Psychology and politics from the University of Wollongong. He has also earned a Master of Arts degree in theology from Sydney College of Divinity. Would you please give the captain a welcome? So, thank you all for being here today, and as I said earlier, we look forward to having a conversation up here, and then we want to bring the audience into the process of the discussion. So I'd like to start off by, Doug, we can start with you. Give us a couple of minutes of what it is that your organization does, and a little bit of the history of how it has started and how it has evolved.
Thank you, Master, and welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today. The Orange County Music and Dance was actually founded by a Chinese immigrant by the name of Charlie Zhang, and I like to tell the story that I personally made him very wealthy because he created a chain of restaurants called Pickup Sticks. And so knowing what I bought over the last 20 years when he owned it, I know I put him over the top. But Charlie came here as a 23-year-old. He had 20 bucks in his pocket and a clarinet, and all he wanted to do was learn to play and be a professional musician. He was he had left China during the Cultural Revolution, and this was his opportunity to find his dream here in America. So when he arrived, he didn't have any money, and went to work in a Chinese restaurant. It was the only place he could actually work and speak. But in the first week, he damaged his hands, cut it with a tendon, cut the tendon with a knife while he was chopping vegetables, and his career as a musician ended. So he went on to stay in the restaurant business and built his success both in the restaurant business and following businesses that he owned. All during that period of time, he was one of those immigrant Americans who was so grateful for the opportunity the country had provided him. He wanted to give back, and he kept thinking about his love of music and his love of children and the opportunities that were missing for some of those kids. And to speak to the ambassador's comments, we know what the challenge is for impoverished kids, other challenged children, to access to the arts. And he decided he was going to bridge that barrier once and for all. So that's a good story, but it got even more personal for me, because as I was stepping into retirement for the third try, he decided that was not going to happen, and it was my responsibility to start the school. So here I am. My third try at retirement failed, but it's been perhaps the most fulfilling period of my life in the 50 years that I was in business, and very grateful to him. But let me tell you what happens now at Orange County Music and Dance. If we're going to be true to the promise that the arts are going to be accessible to kids, we have to make sure that the economic barriers are taken down. So the rule at our institution is, if you can afford tuition, you pay it. If you can't, pay what you can, we'll pay the rest. 50% of we now have 400 kids. By the way, we opened our doors January 2017. Our first kids arrived in April. In May, we produced a music video, which is on YouTube and has 450,000 views. And this year, we were on America's Got Talent, and we had a concert at Barclay Theater with 40 of our kids and a bunch of rock stars like Johnny Resnick from Goo Goo Dolls and Randy Jackson from American Idol. And so it was, it's been a great 18 months, but we went from 0 students to 400 in our school. And we've got teachers implanted in schools in Garden Grove, in Costa Mesa, in Irvine, in Santa Ana, where our teachers are supplementing the classroom, bringing dance, music, and voice to the kids if they can't get to us. The numbers are staggering. I mean, the ambassador talked about the poverty rate. Actually, if you look at about 40% of the kids in Orange County can't afford music or art. 75% of the schools are not meeting the state requirements to provide music and art to the kids. So we're just trying to fill the gap. And by the time we're done, we'll have at least 1,000 kids at our school physically, and perhaps another 1,000 or 2,000 kids that we're teaching around the county.
Taryn, strategic leadership, communication, programming, member services, you do it all.
I do.
How do you do it?
Thank you for having me, and it's good to be here. So OC Grantmakers was formerly known as the OC Funders Roundtable, for those of you who may be familiar with that organization. We were actually established in 2006, so we've been around for quite a while, always with the goal of representing funders and bringing the funding and philanthropic community together here in Orange County. When we were first established in 2006, it was very casual. It was meant to be a space for funders and philanthropists to get together, share best practices, chat, just be that network and that community for Orange County. And it's still that. It's been that for a number of years. I think what has developed over the last couple of years, though, is this need for funders and philanthropists to be more engaged and be more tied in with the issues and elements that are so important to Orange County today. So we have gone through a long development process. I think in 2008, in response to the economy and some of the issues that were happening there, we branched out and started doing a summit for nonprofit leaders, which I hope many of you are familiar with. That summit was an opportunity for the funder community to give back to the nonprofits and say, we're here to provide learning and opportunity for any questions you guys might have, any questions that the nonprofit community wants to bring to the funder community, and start to bridge that gap and start talking and having communication and collaboration. Since then, it's continued to evolve. So my role has changed from a part-time executive administrator to a full-time executive director, which goes in line with our effort to continue to grow what the organization does. So we changed our name to OC Grantmakers just August, July of this year, so that's very new. And the reason why we did that is because we really see a need and a reason for the funder and philanthropic community to take a step up in terms of our leadership on issues that funders and philanthropists are supporting here in Orange County. So what we do now is programming for the philanthropic community. It could be best practices and learning and workshop opportunities on a variety of topics. It could be deep dives into specific issues like immigration or aging or return on investment or how best to streamline the grants process. We also do learning and education opportunities for the entire nonprofit community, whether it's on a topic that maybe our funders are interested in or just something that we're hearing back from the nonprofit community. We've continued to do the summit. So we just, in fact, had the summit on October 4th. We had about 250 nonprofit leaders come together for a full day of learning where we brought got speakers talking about movement building across the country, both outside of Orange County and here in Orange County. What does that mean? What does that look like? We tried to touch on some of the most relevant issues that are impacting Orange County today. So we had featured speakers on the census, which is coming up in 2020. We had speakers talking about the Orange County Equity Report, which I can talk about later. Again, trying to tap into what we are hearing from both the nonprofit and funder community. And then continuing to foster sort of the relationships and the collaboration and the community that exists here in Orange County, both among funders and nonprofits, through just basic happy hours and social opportunities to make sure that that communication is existing and is strong, and that we really present ourselves as this is a community for all. It's not funders versus nonprofits. It's not one versus the other. It's everyone trying to work for the betterment of Orange County. So my job is to try and kind of keep that all moving, to keep it together, to make sure that we are accurately representing the wants and the needs of the nonprofit community and the funder and philanthropic community, and trying to tie those issues together in the best way possible. And so we're very excited about sort of where we're going, looking ahead to 2019. We have a lot of things in the queue. Again, talking about the 2020 census and what does leadership mean on that, diving deep into some of the issues that we hear are in terms of equity and shifts in demographics and key issues that we know are sort of percolating among the community here, and then continuing to serve as that resource for the funder community to come together and say, how can we better support the nonprofits that we work with on a day-to-day basis?
Very good. I have a follow-up question for you when we make the circuit here again. But Captain, the Salvation Army, international brand, well-known, tremendous organization, and as was mentioned in the introduction, I happen to serve on the National Advisory Board of the Salvation Army, and we travel the country holding our board meetings to see the work of the Army. The Army's had a presence here in Orange County for a very long time. Tell us, what is the state of the Army in Orange County? What are the most prominent programs and engagements that you have in the community these days?
Well, let me start by saying good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and that's a great question. The Salvation Army is a mission movement in 130 countries across the world. And here, specifically in Orange County, we recognize that the most pressing need and issue that we are responding to is the national epidemic of homelessness. It is by far the greatest issue that we are facing as a nation at this current point in time. And so the Salvation Army is committed and partnering with multiple different entities and organizations to actually tackle that issue. So currently, January 1st, we will open our 200-bed emergency shelter in Anaheim, which is the first phase of a long strategic plan to deal with homelessness in the county. We would open a Center of Hope in a couple of years past that time, which will be 400-plus bed facility to actually tackle homelessness, not just in a piecemeal manner, but in a holistic approach where we would actually dealing with the hard issues of homelessness, because I often say that homelessness is actually a symptom of deeper seated issues. So the Salvation Army is committed to finding creative and innovative ways to dealing with homelessness. The second critical issue that the Salvation Army is focused upon is obviously affordable housing, which actually ties into that. And so that's a critical emerging issue for us as well. So how we deal with that, how do we deal with that with a long-term focus is something we're already working on. We've got bridge houses already in play. We've got homes where we are helping people who have come from homelessness from our emergency shelters into a bridge housing environment with some case managing, with the hope that eventually they will be able to be self-sufficient and move forward in their journey. The third critical part of this piece that we are currently in Orange County focusing on is the trafficking of vulnerable people, foreign trafficked individuals as well as domestic. And January 1, we will also open up our very first in Orange County, a anti-trafficking home for women, and that will be dealing with domestic issues of women that have been part of the sex slave trade. It's a tragic scenario. I wish we weren't here to talk about it. But the reality is it is an emerging issue. And so we will have that. We've already got, for the last 10 years, we've been working with foreign trafficked women in Orange County, but this will be the first domestic home. And the fourth one is, which excites me no end, it's where the Salvation Army recognizes that dealing with the context we're in, that we need to come up with creative and innovative ways of dealing with these emerging social issues. So our partnership with UCI, our partnership with the Poverty Elimination Foundation, and the Salvation Army, a three-tier partnership looking at finding creative ways in which the Salvation Army nationally can deal with homelessness, deal with trafficking, deal with all drug and alcohol addiction problems. We are looking at new innovative ways of dealing with that.
Well, that's inspiring. Now, taking from what each of you have said, and one or two or all of you can respond, I just asked for some brevity just because of the time. I want to get to the audience, is children. Doug, you're intimately involved in that, Grantmakers, Salvation Army, obviously. My personal view is that our highest priority as a society should be the children, whether it's homelessness, it's abandonment, trafficking, whatever it might be. How do we elevate the public awareness to realize that there are some serious conditions out there that are afflicting children and frankly will sometimes will impact a child's life for a lifetime? Any thoughts on that, Doug?
I don't think the community is aware of the statistics that we quickly spoke about. We tell people that in the city of Irvine, there are 14% poverty level at our schools. No, they say, nah, that's not Irvine. You're talking about Santa Ana? No, Santa Ana is 95%. Irvine is 14%, and another 25% that are just above the poverty line. The community doesn't know it. The storytelling isn't good enough. So part of our responsibility, it seems to me, part of the responsibility of everybody is to tell the stories better. And you tell the stories better by having the kids who are most affected by it as part of the story. They'll tell the story the real way. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, you capture most people's interest. Because they were all kids. Somebody helped every one of us. Somebody helped every one of us as we were growing up. Maybe it was a strong parent. In most cases, it's somebody you've never met. And to have an impact on a child, knowing that could change that child's life forever, the trajectory of that child forever, is a very powerful message and it's a hard opportunity to walk away from. But I think it's better storytelling.
How do you, given the nature of your program, how do you measure success? What does success look like in your program?
That's a question that funders always ask because they want stats, they want outcome measurements. But you got to understand that outcome measurement is really about the qualitative side of what we're trying to achieve. How does a child feel that it's not all against me? I have no future. I am not going anywhere. I'm from the barrio, or I'm from the ghetto, or wherever it is. I'm never going to make it. How do we change that to, I can do it? Somebody believed in me. So for me, the qualitative measurement is the most important factor, and we're not measuring that well enough because people like to know how many fannies were in the seats, not how well did they learn and how motivated are they to go to the next level. If we begin to look at the right metrics, we'll be able to define what success really looks like. And that is what Taryn and her group, which I happen to be a member of, but she's mad at me because I never show up. I would show up if I didn't have to these 18-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week jobs during retirement. But
You're excused.
but I think if we get the metrics right and we focus on the life-changing experiences, what happens to kids after they leave us, how many are working, how many are now productive, how many are raising families, then I think we'll be able to demonstrate success.
I have one for you, Taryn.
Sure. So I'll share really quickly, talking about data and numbers and sort of elevating that conversation. So a number of our members, the funders, do of course grant to organizations that support children. But we have had a question about, how can we gather or gauge the impact? So Orange County Grantmakers has actually commissioned an Orange County Equity Report that's going to be out in March 2019 that's trying to look at some of the numbers that we already know through an equity profile, of an equity lens, of so what does that mean, this kind of next step? How do we tell that we are making that connection with the individual? What does that look like? And so trying to look at some of those hard numbers, but with this different lens of equity and impact that we haven't really looked at before. So we're pretty excited that that's going to be coming out, because it's an opportunity for us to use data sets that we already know exist and maybe are underreported or not being told in the right story or with the right marketing, with this way that ties it back to the community.
I'm curious, given the nature of your work and your line of sight to a lot of the philanthropic community, what do donors, what are they looking for these days? There was a time years past, and there are some of you in this room who will know what I'm talking about, that it was a lot of bricks and mortar, and naming buildings and facilities after people and whatnot. I get a sense that that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get a sense that the modern day philanthropists, and perhaps Bill and Melinda Gates have, contributed to that, or Warren Buffett and others who see philanthropy in through a different lens than what we've been used to. Do you see a transition as people and organizations compete for those dollars out there? Is it bricks and mortar, or is it more about building, human capital and sustainability? What's your thought?
Yeah, exactly. I think the key word here is collaboration. That's something that we hear all the time that funders are looking for. And when we talk about collaboration, we're talking about sort of that deep, impactful, long-term, sustainable collaboration where efforts and missions are actually being aligned so that pockets of money aren't just going to one thing or one program and then ending with that program. They have a continuation or a long-term sustainable plan where communities are actually coming together to work on efforts as a group. That also ties back again to sort of this data idea. It's no longer enough to just say, I'm going to give some money and I hope that it has impact down the line, or I'd love to get my name on. With so many political issues these days and causes that are now close to people's heart and have real world impact that they can see in their community, people want to see that the money that they're giving has a direct connection to the community they live in, and again has sustainability through people working together or organizations working together. So we have seen a significant trend in collaborative models developing in terms of how giving is happening and whether or not they're seen as successful programs down the line.
Gaddi, just to build on what Taryn was saying, one of the biggest changes, I'm president and chairman of a $100 million plus dollar foundation, and when you have resources of that magnitude, you're always asking this question: how do I make the biggest impact? And so what we're finding is, and I found it over 35, 40 years of doing this, that the concept of something transformational, institutional transformational change, is a buzzword that's used, but very few have an ability to really define what that looks like. But what I believe it looks like is that you are creating new paradigms, new collaborations, new initiatives. Collaboration is a key word, but I also think it is breakthroughs. Breakthroughs in the way we attempt to do things. So when you are talking to funders and nonprofits, and if you had the resources, what would you do differently that would really make a difference? Yeah. And when they say, well, if I had the money, this is what I would do, and I know I could change 10 times as many lives, then let's ramp up what we give you over a longer period of time so that you have the resources that you need to actually get it done. So bigger gifts, fewer recipients, over a longer period of time with the goal to make significant institutional change on the lives of the people we're serving.
I agree.
Captain.
I was going to say, I love this conversation because it's an important conversation to be had. You asked the question right at the beginning, and you prefaced it by saying, what are we doing for our children? I believe that the most important thing is that we got to deal with this issue at the root cause of the challenge. Often we fail to do that because it's complex. When we talk about children, we've got to talk about families. I honestly believe the challenge for us these days is how do we actually build resilience back into family units? They often said, the statement is said, angry child becomes an angry adult. If you don't deal with that angry child, it becomes nearly impossible to deal with the angry adult. And I think how we start to work in building that factor into our thinking, into our consideration, is really critical. We have been working really hard at the moment in dealing with some of the challenges faced with most of our donors wanted to actually give to a cause rather than just to a big organization. So we're going to give a whole lot of money to the Salvation Army to do whatever it is you want to do. That's lovely. Mm-hmm. But people now want to give actually to specific causes. But how do you give it a cause? Like, how do you build resilience in a family? How do you build those components? That's where it gets complicated.
And so, as a follow-up to that, as I think everybody in this room knows, the audience would know, and I think you know, that the issue of developing sites for housing for the homeless has been a major controversy involving the federal judge David Carter and cities and
haven't heard of the guy.
Yeah, a lot of debate, a lot of discussion. Yet you just told us you're going to build a 200-bed facility in Anaheim.
Yeah.
How did you get there? I mean, because I hear communities don't want 25 beds in their communities. You're going to put 200 in Anaheim. How did it evolve?
I think there's a couple of things. One is we got to deal with issues, but we got to do it wisely. And there are some localities and locations where you can do certain things in a way that actually helps support and ensures the safety of our community. Now, we've all got families, and the last thing we want to do is put anyone at risk or anyone in a position of challenge. So we're very wise in terms of the locality in which we build our 200 shelter, or about to build the temporary emergency shelter. It's in a location which is well away from any schools, any residences. So I think it's about being strategic and saying, where are the key places that we can do some of these things effectively? And really, it's important for people who are coming to us in crisis to have an environment that allows them to actually deal with some of their critical issues in a way that will help them grow from it. So also our programs, and we've been doing this, as you would know, for several hundred years. The Salvation Army has been dealing with homelessness for over 200 years. We don't just deal with homelessness and say by providing somewhere for a person to reside. We try to deal with a person, and I think Doug alluded to transformation. We want to bring transformation to people's lives so that they leave our place once again with hope and with the dreams that they once had ready to be achieved. And I think that's critical.
So now I told you, Taryn, I was going to throw softballs. Well, here comes a hardball.
I'm glad you're asking her the hard questions.
What frustrates you the most about your work?
That's a good question.
Yeah, and let me give you a moment to think about that. I think it's a really important question because you are all involved in very, very vital work where you are impacting the lives of people on a daily basis, either by extension or directly through programming. And that's why I asked the question, because I know that having worked in this area myself, it can get lonely at sometimes, when you're in those moments of how you're going to champion the cause, how you're going to move your organization forward. So what's the greatest frustration for each of you?
Well, I'll say on behalf of the organization, I think there's always a feeling that you can do more, but you're not able to. So, there are finite number dollars in the community here, and there are so many causes and so many nonprofits in Orange County that are doing amazing work and have amazing initiatives and missions. And there's a want to be able to support all of it, but that's just not possible. I mean, at the end of the day, Orange County is a fairly small funder community. We do have a lot of foundations here, but there are finite dollars. And so trying to understand, trying to gauge, how do we identify those organizations that are doing the best work and get them the amount of money, as Doug alluded to, that will allow them to actually have transformational change. And it's not just, here, have a little money because we want to support you, but then it's not enough for you to actually be able to make that change happen. That's a constant struggle, I think, back and forth with the funders, which is, I want to give to everyone, but I can't. So where do I draw the line? When do I give the big donation versus the smaller one, but then that takes away from being able to support the other ones? So it's this constant back and forth of wanting to support it. From my personal perspective, we are a growing organization. We're trying to do a lot. We're trying to do a lot in 2019. And there is always the challenge of, how can I support the funder community without overwhelming them as well? It goes back to the same question. There are a lot of issues and challenges, and we want to be involved in everything, but I also have to be cognizant of the fact that the funders can't be everywhere at all the time. I do invite you to a lot of things because we're trying to move the needle forward while at the same time making sure we're not overwhelming folks. So I have about 400 ideas, and my board tells me to choose 10.
Good answer. Doug?
Same question?
Sure.
This will be a strange answer.
Okay.
Because it's a great question, and the role that we're playing in working with the lives of a lot of children, the most frustrating thing for me, I can't get enough of the kids who really need what I do to come to where I can help them. It's a crummy business model, because the more kids we have, the less revenue we generate, because the more kids we have are the kids who can't afford us. So we're paying for kids who can't afford us, and I want to double that. And so what's frustrating to me is, we're in a great city of Irvine is a terrific place for this institution to be, but so many of the kids that I need to reach are in Santa Ana or in North County. So to get to them with the resources is the most challenging thing I have to do. And 5 years from now, I'll have a different problem. But right now, I just want to get to more kids.
Good. Captain?
My greatest frustration would have to be is when you deal with apathy. There are a lot of people out there in the world that we live in that just do not really, truly are aware or want to be aware of the critical emerging issues we're facing. I think part of the other issue is waste. There are a lot of, we are privileged, aren't we? We are privileged people, and we have lots that God has given us all, but we are required to use that wisely. And so when I see waste and I see apathy, it grieves my spirit.
So we've got just a couple of minutes, but I would like to pose this question. Tuesday night was election. Changes economically, demographically, politically are happening in Orange County. That's inevitable. And when I had the privilege of serving on the Board of Supervisors, I was the first Latino person of color to ever serve on the Board of Supervisors in the history of Orange County. Today, 3 of the members of the Board of Supervisors are Asian Americans. The Latino community is growing economically, socially, politically, city councils, and so on and so forth. As I traveled the world as director of the Peace Corps, I was often confronted with the question by presidents and prime ministers, we want a Peace Corps program. We want to start a program just like the American Peace Corps. And I would respond by saying, well, tell me about the culture of giving and volunteerism in your country. Tell me about that. And for many of those leaders, it was foreign to their culture, because volunteerism and reaching out to our neighbors and our friends, frankly, as old as this democracy is our country. But in other cultures and other countries, that is not an inherent part of the culture. I'm just curious, as we become more ethnically diverse in Orange County, Does that manifest itself in terms of more giving, more participation, less participation?
So I'm going to address that because we're about to celebrate National Philanthropy Day next week. And when we began that initiative, it was an opportunity for us as a nation to recognize and pay tribute to the millions of people who have volunteered and contributed and led organizations for the benefit of humanity. And we wanted to celebrate that by saying thank you. And what I learned over the years following that inaugural with President Reagan and others was just how scarce that concept was worldwide. And today, I think Charlie Zhang, who started the school, is a great example. He is a philanthropist because he watched others, Chinese, not Chinese, that were giving back to the community. He had no concept of that. He learned it by watching and respecting others. And I think as we mature as a society, we will have more Hispanic philanthropists, more Asian philanthropists. We're going to have more Middle Eastern philanthropists, people that acknowledge that but for someone else, I wouldn't have been here, and so I'm going to follow others in the American dream that have done so. I think it's going to be a terrific beacon of hope and light worldwide on a scale never seen before.
Taryn, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that question of how has giving changed? Giving is no longer just, I'll give some money and then I'm done with it. People want to see the tie that goes back with it. And so that's their time. That's volunteering. That's being active in whatever mission or organization they are giving money to. So we see that when, especially with the younger millennial generation within companies, they want to see that their time or volunteering is tied to something that's close to their heart. It's not just, I'm going to give time because I have to or because my company requires us to have a certain amount of volunteer hours. It's, I am passionate about this cause, and so I'm going to give my time along with my money.
Good. Kevin?
The question of how does diversity and volunteerism go hand in hand is a great question. I think more and more people are looking for opportunities to invest in something that's going to make a significant difference. I think it's going to require us as organizations to change the way in which we engage with people. I think the old way of actually, as you said, buildings and structures and naming rights and all the rest of it is no longer what's attracting our millennials. It's no longer the way in which is attracting the generations coming forward. We've got to find new ways. And I think young people and the generation emerging, they want to invest in something, but often they don't know about it because we still use old types of media focus and communication channels. We've got to be far more tech savvy in how we communicate the message and give opportunities.
Very good. I want to open the floor to questions. Anyone out in the audience that would like to pose a question to any or all of the panelists? Joellen in the back there.
I apologize. We don't have a wireless mic today, so I know Joellen does not raise her voice.
I'll repeat the question.
I think everyone can hear me, I hope. Doug, you represent an arts organization dealing with music. And that kind of philanthropy competes with needs of survival. Very often, people don't understand. They see the arts as a nice thing to have on less needs. Could you explain a little bit about why the arts, especially music, are so important to the academic, creative, and the physical development of children?
Well, I think most of us have seen the statistics of the correlation between the study of music and academic performance, and it's true. The mathematics are there. The data is there. But beyond just what it does to help develop the brain, it's the life skills that it develops the most. So these kids who have to spend 2 hours a day in practice or 45 minutes a day in practice are learning discipline. They're learning how to be persistent. They're learning how to get in front of people and present themselves, scary as it may be. I've seen kids who can't, in a private conversation, look up from the ground to your eyes and speak to you. But put a microphone in their hand, give them a guitar, and sit down, and the kid's like a rock star. And so that feeling of expression and creativity and self-esteem and discipline, those are life skills that I think are the most transformational. I gave some, everybody has a hand. There are a lot of statistics about it, but there is nothing that's more immediately evident than to see the light of a child's eyes as they look from the ground straight up with pride. That is something, you can't give a kid self-esteem. You cannot transfer self-esteem. You can't inherit self-esteem. That you earn internally.
Someone else?
I actually have one question.
Arena?
Since you all represent different organizations, and there's a lot of organizations represented here, I would love to know who you look up to as organizations. Is there another organization that you go, gosh, I wish I thought of that, or that's great, or that you had no idea?
Taryn?
Well, we aren't alone in our model. So Orange County Grantmakers is a philanthropic serving organization. There is a community of organizations like ours across the country, and we actually belong to a national version of what we're doing. And I think there are extraordinary examples across the country of philanthropic serving organizations that have been able to expand upon their initial mission, which might be sort of what ours is, which is education and learning and development, into strategic funding opportunities, peer networks, collaborative projects that actually exist out of the organization itself. There are organizations that represent whole swaths of the country as a group and whole states. And so, those organizations have been able to sort of transcend their initial mission and get into the area of impact policy, of larger scale giving, and again, these collaborative projects among funders to really then funnel funds into issue areas that they've identified. And in a long time, I would love to see Orange County Grantmakers to be able to kind of step up and serve as that organization for Orange County and really have that type of impact that we are working towards. Again, we are a smaller organization. I'm the only staff member. We hope to get larger at some point. And it means that we are currently limited in what we can do. But there are amazing organizations out there that have been able to really sort of pull that philanthropic community together and really help funders have maximum impact. And I would love for us to get there.
Captain?
There's a lot of great organizations out there, and we realize as a Salvation Army we can't do everything. So we partner with a number of those great organizations, World Vision, Goodwill, Orange County Rescue Mission. We need to partner with all of these great organizations. So I don't think one organization, and as you said earlier, we've got to collaborate. If the issues are too great. So yeah, I love all of the various organizations. In fact, we're here to make friends.
I'll give you the model that I like. And it's an organization called Monkey Business Cafe. It's a social venture created by a foster care facility in Fullerton, Hart Community Homes. They broke out of their shell. They broke out of just being a foster care facility. They took a step in a completely new direction. They created their own nonprofit, their own for-profit, low-profit corporation to create a restaurant. They have their own farm. They raise their own crops. Their audience are emancipated foster youth. So these are 18-year-olds and above who have no work experience, no resume. They can't get a job. They're the biggest component of homelessness in Orange County. And they're giving these kids a place to work and learn and grow. And I saw them because I was a judge of a social venture competition, and they blew me away. And the result is it cost me a lot of money over the years because I just kept writing checks to them. But beyond the money, it was organizational structure. When I talk about transformation, they transformed what they were trying to do to teach, to train, to prepare kids who are at most risk to become independent, self-sufficient, and productive. I think that's dynamite. And they make fantastic pancakes. Pretty good chili, too.
A final question. Audience in the back. Katie?
So with a lot of things happening recently with interface with nonprofit and government or public entities, what do you guys feel like policymakers or government would be doing better to help facilitate some of the needs in Orange County?
Get out of our way.
Who wants to tackle that one? Doug just answered that one. Get out of our way.
I think the bottom line is there's got to be a partnership across the board. Obviously, our civic leaders and NGOs and for-profit organizations, we've all got to partner together because we're all facing the same social issues. How do we actually have the conversation around the table is going to be the key part of the puzzle. And secondly is how do we actually deal with the issues from an objective perspective rather than just a political perspective is going to be just as important. We've got to get to the point where we go, what is the main issue, and start to deal and address with the main issue. And I think it is important that will only be resolved by the three-tier partnership approach.
I'll give each of you about 30 seconds for a closing thought. Doug?
First, congratulations to the forum for having this conversation. It's timely, it's important, and you all coming makes it even better. I think Orange County is uniquely poised to be a real leader in California. We have the resources, intellectual and financial. We have a lot shorter history, so we have less baggage about what our great-grandparents did. We're allowed to do things new, innovative. I would say take advantage of the fact that we are at the right place at the right time with the right people, and let's make it happen here. If they can't happen here, it's going to be hard for it to happen anywhere.
Taryn?
I'll just echo that. I know I already mentioned the OC Equity Report, but we saw a sneak peek of those results at our summit, and it really reflected what Doug just shared, which is Orange County is sort of poised to be ready to take the next step as a leader on a lot of issues in a lot of areas, and we have the energy and the resources, both financially and people resources, to do it. So on behalf of Orange County Grantmakers, our funders, our philanthropists are really excited to continue to be involved and to work with the nonprofit community, and the way we see it is we're all in it together. And to the question from Katie, it's about collaboration, and we look to support sort of everything that's going into projects and initiatives in the best way we can.
I'm new to Orange County, so I spent a little bit of time doing some research. And one of the things I recognize about this great county, the very DNA of it, it is a creative, pioneering county. And I think for us to move forward, creativity and innovation has to be foundational stones. There have to be pillars in terms of how we approach the new emerging challenges. And I think those things will put us in good stead.
Well, let me just close with some observations, and particularly with what the captain just said. Those of us who've lived here for a long time, I was privileged to know people like, just to illustrate my point, people like Arnold Beckman, Carl Karcher, Donald Bren, still know Donald Bren, and a number of other entrepreneurs, the Knott family. And I could go on and on and on, and some of you know some of these people as well. I stand in admiration, to the captain's point, of what they built. Henry Sigerstrom, who had the vision to build that enormous development down by the 405 that we all go to with great frequency, I suspect. But these were innovators. These were people who could see the horizon and think about Orange County in the future. Now we as trustees and stewards of this modern era have an opportunity to in some ways re-engineer what they built with a newfound vision for the future, given that Orange County is changing, it's shifting demographically, economically, politically. But I will tell you this, that having traveled to dozens and dozens and dozens of countries around the world, and some of you have heard me say this, I love coming home to Orange County. because I have done comparative shopping, and it is a very, very, very special place. But the critical element of all of this is that we not forget our neighbors, the families who are displaced, who are homeless, who are lost, because to whom much is given, much is required. And so this is an opportunity for us, and with leaders like these three and countless others who are not up on this platform, who are doing incredible work every single day, we can help them achieve success, because when they win, we win, our community wins, and we can celebrate the successes of a modern era of philanthropy, and as Doug alluded to, be the model for the rest of the nation to show how it's done with new technology, with platforms and social media and all of those things. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that one of life's most persistent and urgent questions is, what are you doing for others? And I think that is a question that we should each ask ourselves, particularly as we enter the holiday season, to think about those who won't be able to celebrate it with the same kind of zest and zeal and enthusiasm that we will probably enjoy. But this is a time to remind ourselves that stretching our hand and giving a helping hand is very important. I say to people that every time I see a homeless family with children, it is a call to action. It is a shout for each and every one of us to find a path, find the philanthropy, find the program, find the agency that can help these families, and in particularly the children, out of the state of despair that some of them are living in, not far from where we all reside. To the panel, thank you for what you do. Thank you for all that you are giving to the community and for impacting the lives of so many people directly, indirectly, and otherwise. Thank you for being here today. Owen, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Let us thank the panel. A great and timely discussion. I learned a lot, and as a presidential prerogative of the Orange County Forum, I want the program committee for next year to think about making this annual or regular, because I think this is an important discussion following on everything said today. I'd also like to thank the ambassador for his excellent moderation skills. Let's give him a hand. Thanks also to our sponsors who make this possible for us. I'd also like to say many thanks to you that came in. When you came in the door, you saw those big barrels up front, and I witnessed what we needed, maybe forklifts, to provide the materials that folks did, the materials that will help Second Harvest further their mission. So thank you very much for your generosity. It's a great way to kick off this season of giving. On a special note, the Orange County Forum would like to extend a very special thank you to our friends at Cox Communications. With their assistance, our programming has been broadcast locally on cable and on-demand channels. The Forum is also happy to announce there's at your table a little slip of paper that talks about the December election recap. Yes, we are going to do a recap. We wanted to give you a breather. And then we'll also do our annual State of Orange County in January. So we have a great couple of programs coming up. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Good luck.